A former Republican congressman by the name of David Jolly went on MSNBC, and he made an argument that I thought was interesting, or certainly the topic itself is interesting to me, so I wanted to bring it up here. So this guy says that DeSantis is, quote, far more dangerous for the country than Donald Trump. So let's hear what he says, and then we'll come back and break it down.
David, last word to you. You and I have talked a great deal about DeSantis' authoritarianism in Florida. Nevertheless, were you shocked by his announcement this week that he would, quote, aggressively go after pardons for 1-6 insurrectionists?
No, Mehdi, I say this with conviction. I think Ron DeSantis is far more dangerous than Donald Trump for a very specific reason.
Before we get to that, let me just say, I have no doubt Trump would pardon those people, or at least some of those people. With DeSantis, I actually do have a doubt about it. This might just be him posturing in the primary, which, by the way, is not even the best posturing, because it's like you're just cucking yourself even further to Trump, right? And alienating normie Americans. But actually, I don't know if DeSantis would actually pardon them. I definitely think Trump would pardon at least some of them. So there's that. Anyway, let's continue.
I say this with conviction. I think Ron DeSantis is far more dangerous than Donald Trump for a very specific reason. Donald Trump is willing to ignore the rules, ignore the Constitution, and frankly lead to the incitement of January 6th. But Donald Trump is a transactional figure. He'll do whatever it takes to win. Ron DeSantis, I believe, actually in his ethos, is a culture warrior who wants to take us back 100 years and believes he can use the Constitution to that end, and ultimately has a very dark vision of what America will be. So the idea of pardoning January 6th convicts, if you will, at this point, is because he believes we are engaged in a real war that he has to win. Ron DeSantis tonight, a very dark figure on the political landscape, far more dangerous than Donald Trump.
So look, I'll ask you guys, put it in the comment section. Who do you think is more dangerous, Trump or DeSantis? Admittedly, this is a question I've gone back and forth on. There are times when I felt like Trump is more dangerous. There are times where I felt like DeSantis is more dangerous. There are times I just said, hey, it's 50-50. They're both equally dangerous. Where I stand at the moment is either, as you could tell, I'm conflicted. Either it's 50-50, or if anything, Trump is a little more dangerous. Now, here's my reasoning. Trump has already made clear that when he loses, he's going to say, I didn't lose, and he's going to do almost everything in his power to save face and to get the result he wants. That's what we saw with January 6th. That's what we saw with him insisting over and over that he didn't lose, talking about stop the steal and the rigged election and fundraising off of that. That's what we saw with the over 60 court cases that him and his people brought. That's what we saw with the discussions inside the White House where he was literally considering doing martial law to remain in office, trying to seize voting machines or redo the election. This is what we saw. And so we already know, as a matter of fact, this is how Trump reacts when he loses. All the evidence in the world indicates, and I wouldn't even just say evidence, I'd say all the proof in the world indicates this is what he's going to do again. This is what he's going to do again. So given that fact, look, we know that at least as our institutions are concerned and just the peaceful transfer of power is concerned, he's the worst of the worst. You can't get any worse than him. I mean, I remember that clip. This was an astonishing clip, by the way. I highly recommend you could check it out. There's a Frontline documentary on this. I'm blanking on the name of it, but it shows ever since we've had video cameras, it showed every president, after they had lost an election, every single one goes out there and says, congratulations to my opponent. I wish them the very best. I'm here for them if they need me. And, I gladly step aside in the traditions with our country where if you lose, you do the right thing. That's basically the gist of what every president said. And then there's Trump, and he's like, no, this election was stolen from us. I'm not going anywhere. And it's like, Jesus. Now, Ron DeSantis, how would Ron DeSantis act? Is there a chance he would try to do some Trump-level type, no, I won, and I'm going to say I won, I'm just going to stay in? It's possible. But honestly, I lean more towards, I think he'd just act like any other Republican would act if he were to lose. I think he would just be like, yeah, I gave him my best shot, didn't work out, maybe some other time. Congrats to my opponent. We're moving on. I still disagree with the woke mind virus and the leftist ideologues or whatever, but, we live to fight another day. I think he would probably be a little bit more like Mitt Romney and George W. Bush in that respect. And so on the big question of the future of our country, I think DeSantis would probably be a little better. At least there's a question as to how DeSantis would react. We know how Trump would react because he already did it, and he's going to do it again, right? Now, outside of that, then we get to the question on policy, because that's the most important thing other than, are we going to continue to have a country moving forward? And on policy, I think it's mostly a wash. I do. This idea that DeSantis is more of a culture warrior than Donald Trump, certainly with his rhetoric, he's probably a little bit more leaning into the culture war than Trump is. But Trump was also a culture warrior, man. And all this stuff, I mean, I know he sold Pride merchandise and held up an LGBTQ Pride flag when he was running in 2015 and 2016, but he also banned trans people from the military. Don't forget that. So I think that their policies when it comes to, social issues would be very, very similar. Trump got us the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe versus Wade. That is deeply, deeply conservative, and that is culture war stuff. So I think it's kind of a wash on the culture war stuff. And then when it comes to economic stuff, I think it's kind of a wash. I think they govern almost identically because Donald Trump is just like George W. Bush, is just like Dick Cheney, is just like Ronald Reagan, is just like Ron DeSantis. I think they're all basically cut from the same cloth when it comes to economics. I think they want to cut taxes for the rich. I think they want to deregulate the economy more. I think the only tiny areas where Trump is better is that Trump has said repeatedly he doesn't want to cut Social Security or Medicare, and he's actually not only talk the talk, but walk the walk on that. DeSantis has already voted for cuts to Social Security and Medicare. So at least in some narrow ways, you could say DeSantis is worse on the economy. But then the question is, which is the factor that outweighs it more? The fact that Trump is going to contest an election even if he loses again and potentially overthrow the peaceful transfer of power, or that DeSantis wants to cut the social safety net programs. And then there's this argument of he's just smarter Trump. He's just more effective Trump. Now, the reason I take issue with that is I don't believe the conventional wisdom that Trump wasn't an effective president. Look at the legislation he was able to get through. He got a massive tax cut for the rich through. Not only that, he used his executive orders all the damn time. All the time. He destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We can go on and on here. Over 200,000 jobs were outsourced under his administration. The idea that he was since he was sloppy and since he's not organized, and since he was sort of disliked in the party structures, that he wasn't able to get stuff done. No, he was definitely able to get stuff done. He was very effective in terms of getting stuff through. And so the idea that DeSantis is a smarter Trump and so he'd be more effective, but I already think Trump was effective. So is DeSantis going to be more effective? I don't know. I think that's yet to be seen, right? So overall, I'd say it's either a wash or, if anything, Trump is a little worse, because I do think the threat to our institutions, and I'm not a big our institutions kind of guy, right? But it's plain to see that if he was this close to just not respecting, in fact, he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for all the pressures around him. He was just going to throw out the results of an election. That is something that is more unique to him. So I'm not sure I agree with David Jolly here, but I'll be interested to see what the rest of you guys think. Because look, I'll admit it, I've argued for the DeSantis is worse than Trump previously, but I've been all over the map with this. I think it depends on the current evidence and the current situation and what I'm seeing in the moment that helps shape my view on it. But at the moment, I'd say it's either a wash or, if anything, Trump is worse. So I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. But the bottom line is, you don't want any of them. You don't want any of them. You don't want either one. That's for sure, because either one is not going to be good. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.